Hey guys, how's it going? Last week I released a video talking about the endgame of Path of Exile 2, from the perspective of someone who had completed tier 15 maps and was looking for citadels. I've since run citadels, and I have some significant concerns about how citadels are handled in Path of Exile 2's endgame, and how it is going to act as a significant jumping off point for a significant portion of the community. Now, I acknowledge this game is in early access. I think most of these things are going to change, at least I really hope they're going to change. But I'm providing this feedback now, both for Grinding Games and the general player base, to give you an idea about why it is people are going to fall off at the Citadel stage. Now, to help you understand where I'm coming from, I need to talk about the campaign. Bossing in the campaign feels incredible, and we're going to talk about boss difficulty here a bit. I personally love where boss difficulty is at when you consider it against the campaign. In the campaign, bosses are repeatable right after you fail. They took this straight from Elden Ring, if we can kind of consider that influence. If you die to a boss, you can start it right away. And I acknowledge that was also in Path of Exile 1, right? Where you could just spam your body at a boss. I do love that a boss goes back to full health when you fail it in the campaign. It feels like you do have to overcome. It feels like a challenge, which feels fantastic. And I found the balance to be pretty good. There's definitely balance changes that need to be made, but bosses don't often one-shot you in the campaign unless you're low on defense. Often you'll take a hit and you can heal through it. So the danger comes from taking repeated hits kind of in close proximity to one another. You can basically run the boss until you defeat it, or come back anytime you want. The only thing you're losing when you fail to a boss in the campaign is your time. You're not losing the loot because you are going to kill the boss at some point. You're not losing XP because you're in the campaign. And I think that's the key difference here between bosses in the campaign and in the end game, and why Citadels feel so bad. So let's quickly contrast that to the end game. In the endgame, your map and Citadel bosses are single attempt. If you die to them, that's it. I personally don't hate that for the map bosses. Losing to a map boss means losing XP because you're in the endgame. You lose the loot that boss will have provided. But you can get that kind of equivalent loot back simply by running another map. If there's another map nearby with a boss on it, you can quickly run that. If there isn't one, it's probably going to take you, 20-30 minutes to find another boss, and that's assuming you're not regularly running them and getting them onto your maps pretty regularly. And you can also rerun the same map just without the boss. So realistically, you're just losing that XP, a little bit of time, and the loot that you would have got from that boss. I won't touch on XP loss a great deal in this discussion, that's for another video. Personally, I don't mind it, but I absolutely see the argument against it. So let's talk about why it's an issue that you can't retry bosses. And for this, I'm talking specifically about citadels. Now, to explain why this issue needs to be addressed, I think the best way to do that is to give you an example. So I'll use myself. I've got about 160 hours in Path of Exile 2. I'd say I found the citadels probably after, 50, 60 hours in the endgame. I'd completed my maps from tier 1 to 15, mostly capturing the maps I needed to do. I'll then say I ran maybe an extra 50 maps after I'd completed those. I then managed to find the citadels. If you're looking for them, by the way, I just went hardcore in a single direction. I tried doing circles around where I started, just wasn't finding them. I just went hardcore, eventually found an iron citadel. I then found 2 other iron citadels and 1 stone citadel. So the problem I have with this is they took an incredibly long amount of time to find. That's the biggest issue. And you know what? I'm going to play you a small clip from my stream that shows you exactly what happened when I fought the boss in the stone citadel. So let's play that now. Quick bit of context, you've seen the start of the clip. At this point, the boss is now in an invincibility phase, so I can't damage him. Oh. I guess I killed him too quick, and now he's just in his long invincibility phase. What the fuck is... I wish they did away with those. Like, I understand you need to... Like, he's still in an invincibility phase trying to kill me. What is this? I died while he was in the invincibility phase for 3 fucking years. I don't even know what I died to. Unfortunate. Very unfortunate, right? Now, I'm not here to discuss whether I played that well or played it poorly. Unfortunately, there are a lot of visual effects, a lot of minions. There was a lot of stuff going on. I just didn't see the crystal there. And sadly, it one-shot me through what was effectively 3,700 health. My defenses, all my resistances were capped, so that's just what it was. It one-shot me. It was unfortunate. It's not so much that I have a problem with. It's the fact that if I want to find another citadel of the same style, it's probably going to take me another 10 hours of in-game time. I mean, I could absolutely get lucky and find one in an hour, but after finishing that stream, I continued to play for another couple of hours no Citadel in sight. It takes quite a while to path through the Atlas if you're doing high level maps. And where I come back to is, if I didn't have the time to dedicate to this game, that would have been my dropping off point, right? I had the thought in that moment of, I failed that Citadel, but I need those keys to fight the Pinnacle boss, which is my goal at the moment. If I want to fight that Pinnacle boss, I need to find another one of those Citadels. But that is completely RNG dependent and may very well take me 10 hours of time. Now, for me, I could argue that's fine. The problem is you got to think about your average player. You got to think about the casual player. Maybe the casual player only has between 5 and 10 hours a week to actually spend on gaming. I looked up the global average. The global average is about 8.5 hours. So let's, for argument's sake, say you've got 10 hours a week to do your gaming in Path of Exile 2. Let's say you are in the end game and you are wanting to fight the Pinnacle boss. That's your goal. You've spent hundreds of hours getting here. And just like me, you try a Citadel. You try that Citadel, you die. That sucks. The problem now is, where's the next Citadel? I now need to spend hours and hours of my time looking for another one so I can run it, so I can get the keys to actually get to where I need to go. And you might say that's fine because this is an endgame activity. But the problem is it builds in a great deal of tediousness into the endgame, which is compounded by the fact that if I then fail the Pinnacle, it all starts again. And I think the best way to explain this is to compare it to Dark Souls and Elden Ring and the changes they made to their boss mechanics. In Dark Souls 1, when you had to fight a boss, you had to run to that boss room. That was tedious. Nobody really liked running back to the boss rooms. If you failed at the boss, which was a challenge in itself, running back just felt like extra work. You could take a hit during that run back, which means you lose a heal, which means fighting the boss is now going to be harder. And while that was part of the game, it never really felt great. And I'm going to guess that's why they removed that in Elden Ring. In Elden Ring, you spawn right outside the boss room every single time you die. You can try that boss as many times as you want, or you can come back another time. This is the same situation, but with Citadels. It's not just a run back. It is hours and hours and hours of work to get back to one. And when you do finally get back to one, you're not thinking, ooh, I can't wait to fight this boss. You're thinking, dear Lord, if I die to this thing, I have wasted my entire week of gaming, or I've wasted my couple of weeks of gaming, or I've wasted my month. And I think what it boils down to is that loss of time is just way too high. And this is where I come to, it's in early access. I'm sure this is something they're going to address because it seems a bit egregious to me. Again, looking at the comparison, in Dark Souls 1, it was a little bit frustrating to have to go back to the boss. Often you would learn strats just to run past the enemies. It would take you maybe 30 to 45 seconds, and there'd be a little bit of stress that, I don't know, maybe you'll lose some health during that time. The problem with the Citadel, like I mentioned, you lose hours and hours of time. It's just a bit too much. And I think that's where we come back to punishment for failure in the endgame is a bit too extreme. In the campaign, you get all this time to learn these things and practice them. In the endgame, you simply get single attempts against bosses. And the biggest challenge here is the fact that the bosses will regularly one-shot you. In the campaign, you're told and you're taught to balance your offense and defense. Then you get into the endgame and you start dealing with a lot of the on-death mechanics. They now one-shot you in most cases. You're dealing with bosses. They will one-shot you all the time. And also you're in an endgame where there is a lot more visual clutter because your character is doing so much more. You might notice once you reach the end of the campaign, there is a lot happening on screen. That continues into the endgame, and it was a big part of my death. And that I don't have a massive problem with. I run minions. I know I run a messy build. It is going to be visually messy. I kind of understand that. But does that mean I shouldn't be able to run these Citadels? Or does that mean these Citadels should be a bit of a crapshoot for me in terms of this style of gameplay? Should you not run Citadels if you have a messy build? Because if it covers up a small boss mechanic like my minions did with their bombs, you then just sometimes might die. And that's where we also lead into the problem of, do I blame myself for that failure? Do I blame the game for that failure? Now, everyone's going to have a different opinion on that, and that isn't really the point of this video again. But the reality is, internally, I'm thinking, I wish I hadn't been standing there. But I'm also thinking, wow, that was really shit that my minions were doing that, and that I couldn't see what was happening under the boss. Or the fact that, wow, that boss went into a 10 to 15 second invincibility animation. The whole time he was attacking me. That didn't really feel great. And those two feelings in isolation aren't too bad. If I can just retry the boss, I'll shake those off. That's okay, I'll continue playing, just a bit unlucky. The problem is, that unlucky streak has now cost me hours and hours of work. And after I died to that Citadel boss, I didn't want to continue playing. I did want to continue playing because I wanted to finish the stream and I was still having fun, but I'm not particularly excited to go looking for more Citadels. I don't particularly want to put in 10 to 20 hours more work to find another one of those Citadels, to then know that there's going to be some RNG in there that I don't have a lot of control over. Am I going to be able to see all of the effects? Is the boss going to decide to just whip out a move that one-shots me? Those are the problems, and that is where people will fall off. If people haven't fallen off by the time they got to Citadels, that's fantastic. You want these people around. But there's nothing worse than getting deep into the end game, spending hours of work to get to something you've been achieving. Something that, by the way, the game tells you to achieve. It tells you to locate these Citadels so you can run them. Basically, from the start, when you find the labyrinth, you spend hours looking for them to then die in an instant, knowing you're then going to have to spend hours looking for them again. And if that is not a point at which players are going to drop off, then I don't know what is. Player retention was always a discussion for Path of Exile 2. It was a big discussion around, there was a lot of player drop-off in the early stages of Path of Exile 1. They nailed it for the Path of Exile 2 campaign, in my opinion. I think it's very well done. Needs some tweaks. But this is another one of those massive dropping off points. If people aren't dropping off at Citadels, well done. Well done to you. Look, I'm going to continue going. I'm having a blast. But I just know this is going to be a dropping off point for a lot of people. Now, I think there is a solution to this. I think the easiest solution is to make it so that if you die to a Citadel boss, if you die to a Citadel, you can just repeat it, and the boss is still there. I'm still okay with map bosses going away if you die to them. I think that's fine, because you can find another map and another map boss very simply. Finding Citadels is much harder. If those Citadels are easy to find, maybe that's worth it. Maybe that's another solution, is make them easy to find. But I think the simplest thing is just make the bosses repeatable. If I die to a Citadel boss, I'm still losing the XP. I'm still losing the modifiers that were on that map, on that Citadel map. Just make the boss repeatable. And honestly, I think that solves the biggest part of the problem, because this is going to be a point in which players say, no, I don't want to do that anymore. Because if your entire week, if you don't have that much time to game and you need to find these Citadels, imagine spending a week to 2 weeks finding a Citadel. You finally find it, you run it, and you die in the same way I did. Whether you blame yourself or the game, you die in that way. And that just feels bad, man. Why would you want to keep playing after that? I can understand why people would drop off there. Now, for me personally, I'm not saying I'm quitting, I'm not dropping off. I'm going to continue playing Path of Exile 2. I absolutely adore it. I'm going to look for more Citadels, and I'm going to run them so I can fight the pinnacle boss. But I would not blame people for dying to a Citadel boss and deciding, you know what? I think that's where the game's run its course. But that's not what I want to happen. It's not what you want to happen. It's not what Grinding Gear Games want to happen. So let's get this fixed. Let's hope they fix Citadels. I'm sure it's going to come. But hey, guys, if you are on your way to a Citadel now, absolutely take care. I would ideally suggest trying to find a couple if you can. So you got a couple of backups. It doesn't feel as bad if you know there's one around the corner that you can go run. But realistically, good luck out there and stay safe in those Citadels. Otherwise, that's it from me. Thank you so much for checking out this video. If you've enjoyed it, you already know how to support the channel. Throw a like on the video, sub to the channel if you want to see more, and catch me down in the comments to talk all things Path of Exile 2 and gaming in general. But look, let's be honest, you being here, that's what really matters. Thank you so much for watching, guys. Have a great one, and I'll catch you next time. Cheers.